This is probably going to sound like exaggeration or hyperbole, but I really think people are underestimating what we're seeing right now. I think what we're seeing right now is actually Cardano shifting from one era in its history to another. And along with this shift, it's sort of like we're leaving one race that we've been a part of almost since the beginnings of Cardano. We're leaving that race and we're joining a totally different race. Oddly, though, I think this new race, I think the rules of this new race are better for us. If you were already sick and tired of this era of Cardano and crypto history, and you're already ready for something new, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right. Thank you for joining, everybody. Thank you for joining. Let's see who's here. B11718Z is here. Says his legs are already tired of the race, and I completely agree. I think we're all tired. B117 says, I've got the sails up waiting for that wind, and when the breeze comes, Ada will be the best yacht in the water. I hope you're right. Fly Over Me is here. Fly Over Me says, I made it tonight. Let's go. Hill Dog, thank you for joining, and thank you for saying that. I appreciate it very much. B117 says, Space Bud Gangster, put some respect on Fly Over Me 7412. Indeed. The first, the pioneering NFT project on Cardano. Hill Dog says, for anyone who didn't see video above or listen, it is Charles at his best. Yeah, so links never seem to show up in the chat, just because we get a million bots that try to spam links to malicious things that would steal people's money. So if you posted a link, Hilldog, it's probably not showing up. But I think you're probably talking about Charles's video today, Midnight Unison FBI. It had a title like that. The video from this morning. I agree. This is one of his best videos, and we're going to talk a lot about it. So no worries. B117 says, when BitBoy Crypto gets released from jail for threatening a judge, the bull market starts. I have no idea what the status of any of BitBoy's legal affairs are, so don't think that was me stating anything as fact. Don't sue me, BitBoy. Don't sue me. Fly Over Me is laughing at the reference to the Space Buds. Thank you, Hilldog. Otis Frichov is here. Good evening. Let's go. Afro in the Wind is here. Thank you for joining. Let's go. Ben Ryan, let's go. Mission Zambia is here. Good morning, Mission Zambia. Yep, this is Cardano Rumor Rundown number 746. We've done a lot. Thomas Kirkpatrick is here. Lone Eagle is here. Brian Packard is here. Donkey Ned says, smash that like button. Thank you for saying that. It's that time. Yep, BendoCam, it's that time. Dolphin Dave here from Hutchinson Island. Where's Hutchinson Island at? Yeah, unfortunately, this is a marathon. This is a marathon. Emilio says we are AOS. I think you're saying we are in a new race, or are you saying something else? But I think so. I think Hilldog was referring to Charles's video this morning, and this to me was one of the best. I think I've said this recently about more recent videos Charles did, but recently we've seen a different side of Charles, and I think this does have a lot to do with the fact that we are kind of moving from one era of Cardano to kind of a different era. And it's not just Cardano. I think it's all of crypto. We're sort of moving from one era of crypto to another. Oh, that's East Coast of Florida. Okay, good to know. You taught me something. Thank you. To Madam, I'm Adam. Thanks, Adam. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I think we are sort of entering a different stage in crypto history. And I think this shift is really good for Cardano. So it's a little bit, I want to explain this. I want to explain this in the context of something that has previously happened in history. And this is going to be way too old a reference for many people in crypto. But for a lot of us, this is something we actually lived through, even though it's going to seem like ancient history. It really wasn't that long ago. So back in the day when the internet, we all know the internet goes clear back to DARPANET. So I won't say when the internet started, because then you got to go back decades before this. But when normal people first started sort of getting into the internet, right? When the mainstream started understanding that the internet was a thing and that it was going to be interesting and useful, we didn't quite have a lot of websites yet. We had these things called BBSs. So I'm just old enough that when I was a kid, when there weren't many websites out there, when people weren't like hopping on the internet to go peruse websites, before all that went down, we had these things called BBSs, bulletin board systems. And these were things you could like, by the time I came around, you could like dial into these BBSs. I remember distinctly as a kid, I've told the story before, but a family friend had a son who was running a BBS. And at the time, there was so little you could do with connectivity and a PC. I just like heard that this person, this family friend's son, had this bulletin board system. I didn't even know what was on it, but it was intriguing enough that I just, got the information to dial into this BBS and went and sort of explored his little BBS, right? That's how hungry for information we were back in the day, right? This is before there were websites to go visit. And I thought it was pretty amazing. Like I dial into this thing and this kid, I can't even remember what he had, what kind of content he had, but there was like a really confusing, sort of menu system. And I was like navigating from one part of his system to another, one part of his BBS to another. And there wasn't really anything that interesting to consume there, but it was wild because some person, I had never even met this kid before, but some person had put together this content and I was accessing it through a modem through my PC. It was unbelievable at the time. I was like amazed. And that experience, looked a lot like the graphic you see here. I mean, it was terrible. This stuff looks ancient and super low tech and very different from the internet we know today because it was, and this is probably about the right time period. When I visited this kid's BBS, it was before this time, before 1994, but this is about right for the time period. So this is what the content and the amount of content, the quality of content, the type of content, everything about BBSs super sucks in comparison to any browsing you would do today, any content you would consume on the internet today, and we're not even that far past this, right? We're like 30, 40 years past this. And it was terrible. The BBS experience is terrible compared to the experience that we all get today, just jumping on the web and consuming all kinds of content of whatever kind we want. It's a very, very different world. So Otis Frichov says, since we are in a race, we need matching IAM AOS shirts. I agree. I agree with this. I agree. Sparkland, thank you for saying that. Bindocam, put the phone handset on the modem and check the news on my homie's BBS. This was exactly the experience. Lone Eagle says Excalibur was my BBS in my early teens. Okay, there we go. Twig, thank you for joining. So here's the, I don't want to belabor this point too much, but this experience seemed revolutionary at the time. It was amazing. I was amazed that I was visiting this thing, this digital thing that this other kid created, and nobody was involved. There was no intermediary. There was nobody who had to publish, The only like similar experience I could think of, prior to this was playing like the 8-bit Nintendo system in the 80s. That was also a digital experience, unlike anything else. But, there was a lot of institutional intermediate steps for those, game designers of Super Mario Brothers 8-bit to, go through Nintendo, get that game published, get those cartridges made, for the console to get made. There were a lot of intermediate steps between those game designers and me actually consuming that digital content, playing that game. But this was a weird experience. This was a new experience because this kid just created this thing, this digital thing. I just dialed into it with my modem and I got to enjoy, to the extent you could say the enjoyment there was not comparable to today, but I got to consume this content on his BBS. So obviously you've already guessed what I'm proposing here. We're kind of still in the BBS days in crypto. And here's what I mean by that. So back in the day, all of the content that was going to be on this kid's BBS that I visited, it was all produced, by him or maybe by other people who probably knew him in real life and who were uploading things, to his BBS. It was a limited group of people. There was a boundary, right? It wasn't the whole world. It wasn't some dude halfway across the globe who was going to be uploading stuff to this kid's BBS. Other BBSs, anybody, of course, anybody in the world could have dialed into them, sure. So there were global BBSs, I'm sure. But this kid's, it was a very bounded experience. It was probably just a bunch of his friends or people who had some tenuous connection to him, kind of like I did, who found out about his BBS, and a very limited world of content. We've sort of been in this race to produce the same sort of thing in crypto so far, right? We've been making these very tribalistic, base layer bounded ecosystems. Sure, all of these ecosystems like Cardano are, global, all across the world. There are people from Cardano, people in Cardano from all across the world, every age group, every demographic, every possible classification of person you could think of. Orion's Belt says, longtime AOS viewer and staker, rarely able to catch the live streams. Let's go, Orion's Belt. Appreciate you joining. Twig says, we are laying the foundations now, but the best is still to come. Yeah. So it's still this bounded thing, right? It's like, there's the whole EVM world, and you've got a bunch of developers who are pretty much just developing stuff in the account balance EVM world. And then you've got all of us weird Cardano people, and, the developers over here are just kind of producing stuff. Maybe, there's some crossover, of course, but there's a lot of people who are just in the Cardano ecosystem. And it's kind of like this little bounded world, but even more so than it being about the tribalism between, the Ethereums of the world and Solanas and Cardanos and XRP and Bitcoin, Binance, Tron. Even just besides that tribalism, it's just us crypto people doing this, right? Just like these BBSs, it was just this kid and his weird friends and weird tenuous connections like me. And the rest of the world wasn't even involved in this stuff, right? Even back in the day, I would like mention that acronym to people, BBS. Nobody knew what I was talking about. I could have walked out my door, found 100 people at this age, and probably, if I was lucky, 1 out of 100 would even know what I was talking about, would have even heard of a BBS. That's still the era we're in crypto. We're in this era where we built a bunch of BBSs and we're like arguing over who built the best BBS. But that's just the very primitive form of this race. And we're not having the conversation that we always have in crypto, like, oh, you're so early. People love to do this on X, and they've loved to do it throughout the history of crypto social media. You're so early, blah, blah, blah. This is a little bit more than that. I think in crypto, it's not just that we're early in the history of the technology, but we've basically been building out crypto for other crypto people, right? Even the stuff we talk about, the metrics by which we measure ourselves, are just metrics that matter for crypto people, right? It's like, go to anybody's grandma and start talking to them about TVL. Just go to any non-crypto person, start talking to them about TVL. They have no idea what you're talking about, let alone could they care about this metric, because they don't even know what it is. And yet we are very hyper focused on metrics like that, and it's like, sure, there are other metrics, sort of like, transaction volume and like, average monthly users, things like this that people would understand that we do use in crypto as well. But really, we've been building out all this weird stuff in crypto that's really just for other crypto people, right? It's like yield farming. go to go into any mainstream corporation in, any part of the world. This could be in Europe, in the US, in Japan, in Singapore. Take your pick. Anywhere in the world, go into any corporation and, just go around and ask the office staff how many of them are yield farming or are interested in yield farming. The answer you're going to get is that they don't know what the hell yield farming even is. They have no idea what it is, because we've been building out all this weird stuff for other crypto people, right? It's like, we haven't even onboarded Google to crypto. We haven't even onboarded any of the big tech companies. Facebook tried to onboard itself and Congress shut them down. We haven't onboarded anybody yet. We're still doing this BBS thing. And we're just like a bunch of kids in the basement building out BBSs for other kids in basements who have BBSs or wish they had them, right? It's like it's still such a niche thing. But more importantly, it's not even that the technology is so young and niche, because it's not. We've been around since 2009. Crypto's been around since 2009. It's that we've been building really weird niche stuff, kind of like these BBSs. If I told you the name of the BBS I was referencing earlier that this kid built, if I told you even the name implies how niche it is. I won't tell you the name just because it'd make it too easy for somebody to track me down. But it's not even just the earliness of the technology, because 15 years isn't really that early for technology. It's just that we've been building in very weird directions. We've been racing each other. It's like Solana was racing Ethereum, BNB, XRP, Tron, Cardano, Avalanche, Sui, Aptos. All these blockchains are all like racing each other to do this super niche stuff that the mainstream doesn't care about at all, right? It's like all the DeFi stuff we've been doing, sure, at its core, fundamentally, it's super useful and really novel, interesting technology. Just like BBSs were super novel and interesting, kind of revolutionary at the time. Obviously they go clear back. Here they're referencing developments in the early 80s, but even when I first visited one, it was super revolutionary, super wild to see. And to us in crypto, all this stuff we're doing in crypto is super interesting. And these are the foundations that are going to help us in the next phase, the next era, the next race. But the next race is really, I think, what we're about to enter. It's this era where it's no longer about who can build out the weirdest nerd things in Cardano versus the weirdest nerd things in Solana. That's not what the bigger race is all about. That's not what the big thing is all about. The big thing is all about who can build out, instead of the BBSs, the web. Who's going to build the web? And it's not even going to be about, oh, your BBS uses this system. We think this other system is a better system for BBSs. This is a better format for BBSs. It's not going to be about that. It's going to be about who builds out the best experiences on the blockchain writ large. That's what this is all going to be about. It's going to be about who built out the best experience. And part of that is not going to be even just the retail experience. That's going to be super important as always. But another part of it is who's going to build out the best experience for big companies to adopt a blockchain experience, right? Because they're not going to really, I mean, deep down, they don't really care if it's, Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, Trump, I mean, there are certain things that they should care about, but really that's not what people are going to care about. They're going to care about the bigger experience. And that's what we've got to build out, this bigger experience. And that's where I think Cardano is going right now. Charles did this great video today we're about to talk about. And I think this is going to be a really big transition for us, sort of in our relationship with IOG. But I think it's the point at which we embark on this new era in crypto and this new race where it's no longer about, Cardano onboarding the most developers so we have a higher TVL, so that we do, so that our metrics wise we are competing better with Solana and Ethereum. I think it's going to be about creating this bigger experience that onboards a Google, that onboards another big tech company, or just any big company in a meaningful way. We've had 1 million onboardings, 1 million announcements throughout crypto. This company is adopting this, right? But we haven't had that many meaningful adoptions yet. We haven't had that big experience that giant companies want to be a part of and normal mainstream people really want to be a part of. As soon as the web became a real thing with useful websites, everybody wanted to be a part of it, and every company wanted to have a useful website. That's what the dot-com boom was all about. All of a sudden, everybody realized websites were awesome. Websites were the future. We haven't even hit that point. We've hit that point where a bunch of very niche people are talking about how awesome BBSs are, and they haven't even created that real website experience yet. We're still doing the BBS thing. So let's talk about the way things are changing. And I think Charles's video it's basically the big pivot. This is the big pivot that's happening right now. RVC says, new subscriber, Cardano OG. Thank you for subscribing and for being here. I appreciate that. Cardano is the Ethereum of Japan. Yep, that is definitely the way it was marketed. To my understanding, that is the way it was marketed in Japan. So, and of course, I mean, how else would you explain it? Brian Packard says, no Main Street people will come to an app where you have to find some strange person on Discord to fix your problems. Very true. Very true. Just like that BBS experience. The first time I visited that BBS, the kid who ran it had to log in and type suggestions to me as I was using it. He logged in and he was typing things that were showing up because I was his only user, right? This does not scale. This does not scale to the mainstream. Twig says, speaking of new projects, check out the Phantom. Okay, I don't know anything about these projects. Sometimes people mention projects and I just don't know anything about them. So we are way early. 99% of people are still clueless. It's depressing that even people I categorize as smart people don't have a clue. So true. So true. At Cardano, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Jerry says, good morning. It's payday, so another great opportunity. DCA. That's what I'm talking about. DCA. Yep, a lot of people getting paid right now, apparently. Good for you guys. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of the fiat paydays and the DCAing. Crazy, haven't thought about BBS in a long time. I used to play Trade Wars on BBS. Thanks for the memories. Yep. Crypto in general needs way better use cases than just numbers go up or meme coin value extraction. Exactly. Orion's Belt, thank you. This is exactly it. Number goes up is a sucky use case. Meme coins, PFP NFTs, they were cool to us, just like BBSs were cool to me, as a kid. But it's a suck use. These are suck use cases compared to, what's coming. Just like BBSs were terrible compared to what we would eventually have on the web. Fly Over Me says, RealFi is what crypto needs and it's coming to Cardano. Yep. We're going to talk about it. Yep. Otis Frichov agrees with the Orion's Belt. Yep. It's time. So let's jump into this. Let's jump into what's coming. Josh Mick says, privacy layers and privacy coins actually make crypto usable for day-to-day. Yep. This is where we're going with this, guys. This is where we're going. Let's jump in. So Charles did this video today. It was called Midnight Unison FBI and Tweets. So this video was, earlier today. So yesterday, the live stream was called Leap of Faith. And I basically said, hey, we just need to do this, right? 2025 hasn't turned out well for crypto, hasn't turned out well for Cardano, hasn't turned out well for anybody except for Bitcoin, had a passable 2025. Ethereum did some little things, but basically all of crypto, 2025 sucked. And I proposed that we just need to take a leap of faith. Cardano as an ecosystem needs to spend the 100 million or whatever part of that we need to spend. It sounded like IOG and Midnight were going to kind of take up the mantle and pursue all the integrations we needed, the stablecoin, tier one stablecoins, and oracles and whatever else we needed. Sounded like the price tag was 100 million. And I was like, let's just do it. We got to do it. 2025 turned out terribly. It's time for us to take a big leap of faith. And in this video, Charles is basically saying, hey guys, we're doing it. We're going to take this giant leap of faith. Here's how we're going to do it. So there's a lot of information in here. This was Charles. This was a very optimistic Charles. I think this whole soft fork over the weekend was a big mental reset for everybody in Cardano. And I think this video kind of reflects that mental reset. So Charles says a lot of things, but I think it's important. I think it's important to go through this so that everybody understands how big a pivot we're about to experience. So Charles says, we're lagging in integrations, and those integrations are going to be horrendously expensive. And here's where it gets interesting. He says, we'll take our fair share of it and we'll submit a treasury proposal as a bundle of a whole bunch of things you guys have been asking for. We'll get it done 6 to 12 months, and then everybody will be here. Then the conversation will be over, and you really have to build real things. So I think this is exactly what we needed to hear. He's basically saying, when he says, we'll take our fair share of it, I think what he's saying is IOG and Midnight are going to take on their fair share of it. How much that is, I don't know. We're going to find out when this treasury proposal hits. But I think what's going to happen is IOG and Midnight are going to take some part of this 100 million. I'm hoping he means some part of the price tag. And he's going to submit a governance proposal for a treasury withdrawal for the rest of it from the treasury. Like I won't repeat yesterday's video, but I think this is a leap of faith we need to take. This is something we need to do. We need to get past this tier one stablecoin thing, the Oracle integration thing. We need to get past all this and just do all the stuff we're ever going to do. We just need to do it. So, okay. Let's see. Forerunner 93 says, not much of a TA guy, but check out the Livermore pattern. I have no idea what a Livermore pattern is. There's so many different patterns, so many cup and handles, so many head and shoulders, so many Fibonaccios and Ichimoku clouds and Bollinger Bands. It's like, I love that it exists. It's so entertaining to me that it exists, but I pay so little attention to it. I don't even know what you're talking about. I truly believe it is male astrology. So, okay. So Charles said, as we know, the token's going to launch on December 8th. There's going to be lots of liquidity, lots of great announcements. So this is exciting to me. When he says there's lots of great announcements, he's kind of been foreshadowing a lot of great announcements, right? And I'm hoping the way he laid this out in this video, I'm hoping he means when the token launches or right around, they're around, sort of contemporaneous with the token launch, I'm hoping we hear about some great partnerships, some great things coming. He said, and here's where we're going to get into a bit of this. Here's where we're going to get into a bit of the pivot. C493 says, I don't even know what I'm talking about. CT is rotting my brain. All of us, dude. I think it is rotting all of our brains. But actually, what Charles talks about next addresses exactly your comment. But I think we're all with you. I think it is rotting all of our brains to some extent, right? It's like there's a little bit of dysfunction in crypto Twitter, right? There's a lot of noise to signal. The noise to signal ratio is too high, right? Lone Eagle agrees. Lone Eagle says, I was a mechanical engineer and I do not understand that stuff and I'm good with numbers. There you go. It's it's like, I would say it like astronomers don't understand astrology either. Right? Okay. So here's where we get to the pivot. And this is a pretty big pivot. This is probably a bigger pivot than people are realizing. Charles says Discord will be the single source of truth for midnight. Charles is going to start personally doing stuff in the Discord. So they have 600 applicants to the Midnight Ambassador program. They'll take the top 50. So he's going to get back to, he's going to talk a little bit more about the Discord, but this is, and we'll get to that, but this is a pretty big point. This is a much bigger change in how we interact with IOG, I think, than people are realizing. But first we'll hit a little bit of other news he laid on us. So he says there's going to be incredible news about dual Cardano midnight integrations. So I heard this as integrations that would be integrations with both Cardano and Midnight. So Cardano's not being left behind, but we're going to hear incredible news about some integrations that will apply to both Cardano and Midnight. There's going to be a proposal coming, and I think he's just referencing the Treasury withdrawal governance action. There's going to be a proposal coming, and you guys are going to see some really cool stuff. He says, I firmly believe Midnight was the MacGuffin to bring Circle and Tether and bridges and oracles to Cardano. So previously people were asking questions like, hey, basically the tenor, the tone of the questions was basically like, is Cardano going to get left behind here? And it sounds like the opposite. It sounds like Midnight is just sort of the catalyst that's going to end up bringing all this stuff to both Midnight and Cardano. Charles, sort of throughout his videos for the last like 6 months or so, has been talking about how the Midnight team is extremely aggressive. He said it again in this video. I believe he was referencing the Midnight team. When I say Midnight team, I don't know, if we're talking about the foundation or Shielded or both, but Midnight seems to be a very aggressive, organizationally very aggressive in a good way, right? I think we'd all agree it's in a good way. If it's, as Charles put it, the MacGuffin that brings Circle and Tether and bridges and oracles to Cardano. So, and in a lot of these cases, I'm paraphrasing him. So please do go listen to this video on your own if you haven't heard it. So Charles said, if it's a Midnight integration, it's a Cardano integration. So he's laying to rest these concerns that certain things would be integrated into Midnight, but not into Cardano. He says, the Midnight Foundation is also going to be an active participant in DeFi, and that alone is going to bring a lot of TVL and real world assets to match that. So think about this. What if all this time in Cardano, what if all this time the foundation, the CF and Emergo and IOG had all of their money in Cardano DeFi? What would that look like? What would that have looked like? Charles says, RealFi is the sleeper that I don't think people fully understand. So Charles will be speaking at Abu Dhabi Finance Week, and he points out this is an event where there are kings and queens and sovereign wealth funds and a lot of big money. He says he'll be there speaking. John O'Connor, who we know is in charge of the RealFi initiative, John O'Connor will also be speaking there, and he'll be talking about RealFi and how they have done, and this is a crazy number, how they've done over 1 million loans in Kenya and Uganda already with Charles's money. So think about that. I don't think we've heard Charles say that they've done a lot of loans. In this video, he says they have already done over 1 million loans in Kenya and Uganda with Charles's money. It sounds like as sort of a proof of concept. He says these are fast 30 to 90-day loans. This is a lot. If the whole idea is to bring all the capital from Bitcoin into Cardano and Midnight to do Bitcoin DeFi. And then you need a really compelling product, right, for them to get some yield and also to accomplish something in the real world, having already done it a million times. Having already done a million 30 to 90-day loans is a really different thing, right? This is the sort of, I won't say 0 to 1, but this is kind of the 0.5 to 1 thing, right? That I think BBSs to websites were, right? It's like nobody cared about BBSs. Nobody cares about your yield farming. Nobody cared about your PFP NFT. Nobody cares about your meme coin. Nobody cares about that. But if Charles alone, with his own money, can do 1 million loans in Kenya and Uganda, how much can all of the capital in Bitcoin? If all of the capital in Bitcoin, and of course, we can't talk in absolutes here, it's going to be some percentage. If the Bitcoin DeFi on Cardano/Midnight thing works, it's going to be some percentage. But if X percentage of that Bitcoin capital can be deployed in RealFi, and it's doing real world loans in places that need capital and don't have access to capital. This is sort of like this going from BBSs to websites thing. This all of a sudden we're doing something, right? All the yield farming we do, nobody cares. Meme coins, nobody cares. Nobody cares. This is all some nonsense. We've been doing a bunch of nonsense business, guys. We've been doing a whole bunch of nonsense business. Now it's time for us to do the real business. This is the big pivot. This is BBSs, basically a bunch of nonsense, a bunch of amusement and nonsense, nonsensical amusement. We're going to go from that to doing the real stuff. So Charles said Sunday and others are helping translate this into the DeFi world to be launched on Cardano. And here he said Cardano. He didn't say Midnight. He said Cardano. So think about this. So he talks about this sort of sounds like a proof of concept where Charles and John O'Connor and the RealFi team did 1 million loans in Kenya and Uganda. And then he says, Sunday Labs, who we know knows how to build DeFi, Sunday Labs and others are helping to translate this into the DeFi world to be launched on Cardano. This is a big deal. This is a big deal, guys. This is a big pivot. This is some real stuff. Charles says that's launching next year. And he thinks that's going to be, along with Midnight, the single biggest driver of TVL and transactions on Cardano. So your boy Charles here is predicting that along with Midnight, that's going to be the single biggest driver of total value locked and transactions on Cardano. He's saying this is the big product. They're pushing for this to be the big. I won't use that word that begins with killer and ends with DAP. I'm not going to use that one, but this is going to be the big thing. They're going to push to make this the big thing. And I think this is the right thing to be the big thing because this is a website, right? This is a difference between a BBS where you just go on the BBS and you're like playing little games and talking to a bunch of other, neck-bearded dungeon masters. This is going from that to people buying things on the web, to Amazon being a thing where you can buy books and then all of a sudden you can buy anything, eBay, all of a sudden you can auction anything, you can buy anything in an auction. This is that big move from, our neckbeard dungeon master stuff we've been doing around here for 15 years to the real world stuff that, probably everybody's going to want to do. Because if everybody figures out that they can get, this yield and they can make loans to some farmer somewhere in the world who doesn't have access to capital, people are going to want to do that, right? The yield sucks in a lot of the products that are fed to us by Wall Street, right? The yield kind of sucks and there's no good use case. There's no farmer getting that money, right? You're not helping some farmer buy, seeds to plant his field, or you're not helping, some person in some market somewhere, to buy a new, cart for their market stand. So this is pretty attractive. And, I don't think I need to remind people we know what RealFi, we've already got the RealFi's already got a website. Like, it's a real thing. This is a real thing that they're building. There's a whole team. There's a whole team behind this. We already know John O'Connor. John O'Connor says we're a team of passionate entrepreneurs. John O'Connor, CEO. We already know these guys. We know John O'Connor. We know Dynal Patel. We already know these guys. We know they've been doing this a long time. We can go all the way back to the early days of Cardano. We'd see interviews with John O'Connor. He'd be in Ethiopia. He'd be in Kenya. He's been at this a long time. This is not a new fad. This is not a new trend. This is not some dude in a Discord launching a damn meme coin. This is the 0.5 to 1 thing. This is crypto trying to do real stuff. No more of the fake stuff. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna, you know what? I never ban anybody, but I'm actually going to ban somebody who I'm pretty sure is a bot. So if you just got banned and you're not actually a bot, let me know. But I'm pretty sure the person trying to push some unknown token, it was a bot. So I just banned somebody. That's like the first time I banned somebody in a long, long time. But okay, Binochem says if they want to support midnight, Cardano is required. That was said really early. Yep. Thomas Kirkpatrick, thank you. Yeah, me too. I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this since I first heard, the words Cardano blockchain. I've been waiting for this ever since then. James Johnson says tech is way ahead, but I wish this implementation catch-up phase happened 6 months ago, but I'm very relieved to hear it's becoming a big priority. Yeah, I agree. I was kind of frustrated. I won't lie. Leading into 2025, I was a little bit afraid of what 2025 was going to look like, because I was like, what's the narrative for Cardano? I know what we were saying in 2021. In 2021, we were saying, hey, we're going to do this thing better than Ethereum did it. That was our big war cry. I was like, going into 2025, I don't know what our argument is. I don't know what our big, as we run into battle, what are we yelling? Are we yelling like we have some DeFi and some meme coins? That's not a war cry. That's not inspiring, right? I didn't know what it was we were yelling. So I also wish this had happened 6 months ago. But the reason why I say we're getting into a new race, and it's a better race, the rules of this race are better than the race we were in before, because the race we were in before was like, who can be the best meme coin casino? Who can be the best, yield farming experiment for a bunch of super niche financial users, small party financial users, who can do the best, microscopic impression of Wall Street, right? Who can create the best microscopic Wall Street, or, meme coin casino, or NFT casino, or, who can run the best ICO, which was its own casino source. Those races all suck. Those are stupid races. That's who's the best BBS, right? Nobody can tell me right now. Maybe a few people can tell me who was the best BBS, but nobody else cares. And nobody else even knows what a BBS was, right? Nobody knows what it was. Nobody cares now. Nobody knows what it was, because the web was so much better. It was so much better. And that's what we're doing here. We're making something that's so much better than being a part of a meme coin casino. And we don't even know. Will Cardano win? Will Cardano win this? I sure hope it does. And Cardano has been working towards this for a long, long time. This is exactly what we've been working towards. You remember going clear back to Charles's big puzzle about the African bird. All he was talking about was doing real world stuff from the start. And we've gotten sidetracked for the last 4 years, trying to figure out how to compete, in all this other BBS stuff, all this other BBS nonsense business. But it's time. The whole space, I think, is going to have to pivot towards this, because you don't want to be the best BBS systems operator in 2010. You want to have the biggest website in 2010. You don't want to be in the BBS business anymore. You don't want to be, building out microscopic versions of Wall Street or meme coin casinos. You want to do the real stuff. That's what we're doing. I agree. It's a big deal, B117. It's a big deal. Binochem says undercutting the super shark loan market. loan shark market of a historically difficult region while still making real yield, then making it public product is pretty huge. It is, right? I mean, people who follow this channel know there's somewhere I go. There's another part of the world I go to, and I know a lot of people there who are engaged in real economic activity, and it's very different when there is, when you don't have the access to capital that we have in the, very, very rich countries. I'm just going to say rich. We can come up with all kinds of euphemisms, developed, highly industrialized, whatever. But let's just call them rich countries. When you don't have that kind of access to capital, everything's very different. This is really useful. This is like real utility. This is real utility for most of the world, for most of the actual world. It's not some niche dungeon master stuff like we love to do in crypto. Currently, it's some real stuff. Twig says it's the midnight ADA combo that unlocks many more features to the ecosystem. Yeah, this is a whole new thing we're talking about here. Sir James says, I have no idea how to make it possible on Cardano, but I'm going to work towards offering travel services, even if it just having ADA holders using their Visa cards with crypto on all in time. Yeah, put it on Blue Pages. Put your contact info on Blue Pages. We should get everybody going on this real world stuff. Lone Eagle, if you remember, Amazon was asking for donations on every order because they were spending more than what it cost to ship. Now everyone wants to invest. Very good point. I don't remember the donation era. I can't remember that about Amazon, but I remember all kinds of people who had any kind of use case on the internet. It was very speculative whether or not they were going to be able to make money. And now, Jeff Bezos is just, I won't say anything pejorative about what he's doing, but he's doing some wild stuff now. He's doing some wild stuff. He's not the same, like accountant looking nerdy guy. He's a very different guy these days because of his massive, massive wealth and success. Too many people are thinking either or instead of together we can. That's exactly right. It's like, it wasn't right. We're a bunch of BBS systems operators talking about who has the best BBS. That's not the story. The real story, the bigger narrative, the bigger story, the bigger narrative is that we're building the web. It's not about who has the best BBS, right? It's about who's building the web, who's building the online experience. And that's the 0.5 to 1 moment. Satoshi creating blockchains. That was a 0 to 1 moment. But what we're doing right now, this is more like 0.5 to 1. Just like DARPA creating the internet was the 0 to 1, and BBS to websites was 0.5 to 1. Same thing. Guinness Speaks says, was kind of crazy how much interest in Midnight and having the meme coin Luna as the mascot. The infrastructure being built is great. Yeah, I won't comment on the mascot part of that, because I know there's some discussion, I took it as joking discussions about that earlier today, but this is John O'Connor, very close, right? Very close. This is John O'Connor instead of John Connor, but very close. I love that he's sort of the leader of the rebels, though. Sub-Zero, get him, yeah. Hola, Rulo. Hola. John O'Connor is a beast. Been talking about his RealFi play for the past couple years. Really excited it's finally coming to light. Absolutely, Lucid. This is a really big deal. Has anyone found a way? Okay, we're going to ban this one as well. Okay, I'm going to ban. Obviously, these are going to be bots. We're going to ban those. Yep, I think the ban invited more. Okay, yeah, this is the problem. So apologies for that, guys. Okay. Yep, the ban invited more. Okay, Josh Mick says, the issue with ADA right now is that the slow and steady process doesn't excite a lot of get-rich-quick investors. It will, however, excite massive industries and governments. Yeah, and I mean, I think, that's kind of the way that movement from BBSs to websites worked, right? It's like initially the websites that were out there and available when, it first became public knowledge that there were websites for us to visit, they weren't Amazon and eBay, right? It wasn't Amazon and eBay and, all the stuff, all the big websites that would later become really useful and interesting. It was weird stuff. I remember there was like I've talked about this before, but I remember there was some kind of a like, computer magazine. It was like, PC magazine or something. There was an issue that came out and they had like a map of the internet. It was like literally at the top, there were giant letters, probably in some super lame, nerdy font that said, map of the World Wide Web. And then they just had like 100 websites on this like fold out map inside the print magazine. And it was just like a bunch of interesting websites. And I remember one of them was just like, it was just like a tutorial on lock picking. It just had like diagrams showing you how to pick locks. And that was like one of their picks for like the 100, most interesting websites for you to go visit. And that's the kind of stuff that initially was on the web. And then eventually, the web did what you're describing. It excited massive industries and governments. And then the Amazons, first, of course, it was small startups, who somebody had an idea. Somebody had an idea for eBay and then it got built into eBay. Somebody had an idea for Amazon, then it got built in Amazon. So it's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff. And here's one idea. Maybe RealFi, maybe this is the birth of something gigantic. Maybe RealFi becomes an Amazon, a Bitcoin. Maybe it becomes this incredible thing. Maybe this is that moment. Maybe this is, Jeff Bezos, with his little desk and his, what did they say? He always drove like a Honda Civic or a Toyota Tercel or whatever it was. Maybe these are those days, but this is definitely some kind of a move from the BBS days to the web days. Okay. Coop to Scoop says, I'm starting to get a lot of websites giving me ADA rewards with ADA Pay. Okay. I don't know anything about that. Okay. Thank you for reporting those people. 18 months ago, everyone was saying ETH had no North Star either, then it broke all-time highs. Well, not much changed. ADA sentiment will turn someday and no one will know why. Yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of like, I mean, there was a time when the time I was describing when when you could dial into a bunch of BBSs. I mean, famously we have quotes like, who was it? Krugman or somebody like that said that at the end of the day, the impact of the internet will be no more than fax machines or something like that. He thought the whole utility was like fax machines. People are saying that right now about blockchain because we've been building a bunch of like super niche stuff that only we care about. But that's all about to change. We're going to build some Amazons and some eBays. We're going to build those things, but we're in that weird phase where we transition from BBSs that only a bunch of niche people who belong to those BBSs care about. We're going to go from that to building stuff that the whole world cares about. Emilio says, I hope someone capable would use my idea. I can't. Tell us what it is. Maybe there's somebody in this very chat. Maybe there's somebody in the audience in the chat right now or somebody else who will take your idea and build something wonderful with it. Decentralization and democratization of all markets is the real goal, isn't it? I hope this is where it starts. Yeah, and I think so. If we are to decentralize and democratize all markets, we have to do real world stuff, right? Markets are real world things, right? Markets would not exist if there weren't there wasn't real world economic activity going on. James Johnson says, glad I finally caught your live stream. I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you for saying that, James. I appreciate you saying that for real. Sloga for Hire says, it is possible that Krugman was just really bullish on fax machines. That's one of the funniest comments I've seen in a long time. Thank you for that. It's possible Krugman was just really bullish on fax machines. So Charles is talking about all of this stuff. He thinks this is where we're going. He thinks this is the goal. And what's crazy, we know this is what he's thought for a long time. He was talking about this prior to the Wyoming summit in 2021, prior to our last all-time high. This is where he wanted to go the whole time. He kind of got forced into caring about all the DeFi metrics and the meme coins and the NFTs, but that's not what he was talking about prior to the 2021 2021 summit. Okay, Words in the Wilderness says the Cardano narrative is all about becoming the root of trust for partner chains, dApp chains, powered by lightweight supernodes that allow SPOs to operate multiple chains at low cost at the same time. We'll actually talk about that. We're going to talk about something very related to this comment, but I think that is a very fair comment and probably pretty prescient and a very accurate description of where Cardano seems to be going. So Words in the Wilderness, very, very accurate comment there. So Charles also mentioned, he sort of reaffirmed that they have to get Laos out next year. So this is input endorsers. Don't forget, we've been told this multiple times that input endorsers are coming next year. I think this is a pretty big deal. Charles also said Hydra is also, people shouldn't forget, Hydra is also now on mainnet in multiple forms. We've got Delta DeFi, which we've talked about on this channel. It is a DEX, which is running on Hydra. The Glacier Drop is running on Hydra. We have Hydra Doom, and we have the vending machine that was created by Sam Leathers and friends. Of course, the vending machine, very much a nexus between blockchains and the real world. So then he talked about Coinbase a bit. I thought this was some interesting information that I don't think a lot of us had. I don't think a lot of us had this information. So Charles said Coinbase is not in the launch set of exchanges that will be supporting Midnight. So at launch, Coinbase is not part of the set of exchanges that will be supporting Midnight. No surprise. We all kind of figured that. We all kind of knew that. But his explanation of why is something I hadn't heard yet. He said it's because they're invested heavily in a competing project called Aleo. So if you go to the Coinbase website on Aleo, they say Aleo is an L1 smart contract blockchain focused on enabling building private decentralized applications using ZK technology. So of course, this is, pretty much an equally applicable description of Midnight. So no surprise, they are not going to be super interested in launching a competitor on their exchange. So Charles thinks there is a path to get Midnight on Coinbase eventually, but they're going to be slow out of the gate. So additional news, and before we move on to that, be aware, Charles also mentioned this article in his video. This is quite a good article. State of the Network on the Midnight site. Go to the Midnight blog. You'll see this article by Ian McRae, and it has some interesting information in it. In fact, one of the more interesting pieces, so they lay out sort of the timeline for things. The redemption period, is basically gonna be 450 days. This is the thaw period where we all get our, 25% tranches. The first tranche is going to come for each of us somewhere between 0 and 90 days. And then all three of the additional, the subsequent tranches will be exactly 90 days after that. So we sort of already knew that part. The lost and found period will be 4 years. And then there's this part, exchange facilitated claims. Several exchanges, including Kraken, OKX, Bitpanda, and NBX, are working to enable claims for their users. I think this is that Norwegian exchange. What is it? We talked about it the other day on the channel, Norwegian Block Exchange or something exchange, but I think that's that Norwegian exchange. But I think, I'm sort of taking this as the list of exchanges that are kind of participating in Midnight here. So Kraken, I think if you're in certain parts of the world, Kraken is going to stick out quite prominently there. No surprise. You could have almost predicted this. Who's been very friendly to Cardano all along? Kraken and Binance, right? Binance has gone through some changes. The founder kind of do some jail time there, and then get pardoned. So Binance has been going through some changes. So who's left? Kraken has been very friendly to us. Who wasn't friendly to us? Coinbase. So not a lot of surprises there. There's a lot more information in here about what's going on with Midnight. So definitely visit this article if you want some more details on exactly what's going on in the world of Midnight. So we know that Coinbase is kind of out. Coinbase is not going to be a part of it. Charles does say that they're going to go to consensus in Hong Kong, and they're going to announce a crazy L2 product for Midnight that will be 10x in terms of marketing what Hydra Doom was. He said it's going to blow everybody's mind. So he's really talking up whatever product, whatever L2 product they're going to announce at Consensus Hong Kong. So there's a bunch of announcements. Charles has kind of indicated there's a bunch of announcements sort of in the hopper. He's been saying this for quite some time. We've sort of known that he's had a bunch of stuff up his sleeve. Is it going to live up to the hype? We don't know yet, but there's definitely some stuff coming for us. So here's where we get back to what we talked about, how, sort of a sign of the times. I would call this a sign of the times that things are changing a little bit in Cardano, as I think things are about to change for all of crypto. So Charles is really going to focus his personal communications time in 2026 on Midnight, and specifically on the Midnight Discord, where he hopes to get 1 million members. So if we look at what's going on in the Midnight Discord, we see this. Earlier tonight, there were 1,700 people online and 11,000 members. This Discord was established in October 2023, apparently, but 11,000 members. He's hoping to get to 1 million. So it sounds like Charles is going to pull back. He's going to pull back quite a bit from X, right? We've heard him talk a lot recently about how X is basically too much chaos, too many people, too many people saying, things that aren't valuable, basically, too much noise, not enough signal. He doesn't think it's like a functional place to be doing all the communications. So he's going to pull back from X, and he's going to be spending a lot of time in Midnight. This is a huge change. A big part of the story of Cardano has been Charles jumping on X, doing videos. And instead of that, we're going to see a lot less Charles on Twitter, a lot less Charles on X. He says he's going to hit all the X spaces in rotation for Avalanche, Solana, Bitcoin, Cardano, and Ethereum. So he's doing exactly what you'd expect if you're trying to push Midnight. If you're trying to push Midnight, this is probably exactly what you'd do if you're Charles. You'd go and sort of round robin all the big recurring X spaces for Avalanche, Solana, Bitcoin, Cardano, and Ethereum. So we're going to have a lot less of Charles just jumping on X to do, stuff for us, the Cardano community. If you want that, we're probably going to have to go to Midnight. He says he's going to do those X spaces for all those different ecosystems who are sort of connected to Midnight. But a lot of the interaction stuff is going to move to the Midnight Discord for the next 3 to 6 months, it sounds like. He did mention some kind of hyper sophisticated Charles digital twin. He mentioned AI. He said that this digital twin is going to be taking over his X activities. We've seen other people do this. There's an AI Raoul Pal. So a lot of people are starting to do this. So we'll see how that turns out. We'll see if that's something valuable, or if it's just kind of, if it's something novel and valuable, or if it's just kind of, something amusing. But we'll see exactly how that goes. Lone Eagle says, early 90s, Apple Computer versus IBM. Apple Computer was proprietary, and IBM was like, you clone us. It about bankrupted Apple Computer. Cardano is open source, like IBM cloned computers. Yeah, I remember. I still remember as a freshman in college, I showed up to college, and I had a PC. I just had a little PC laptop, and my roommate who lived in the actual room with me, we had like bunk beds, if you can believe that. This was university mandated. This wasn't our choice, but I showed up, and he had the most beautiful brand new Apple on this desk. The thing was so expensive at the time. It was incredibly expensive at the time. And I remember thinking like, that thing is so fancy. That can't possibly be the future, when it seems like it'd be so much easier for this form factor, this other thing. Because his had like the computer built into the monitor, and it was all these fancy, you know, like candy type colors. I was like, that's so, there's so much, that's so embellished. Like, that can't possibly be the future. But sure enough, a lot of people still using Apple stuff today. But like you said, IBM a lot more replicatable. BindoCam makes a good point. A Discord with 1 million users would be unusable. Yeah, can you imagine how fast the chat would be going? It'd be crazy. Jordan for America, thanks for dropping in. At Cardano agrees. 1 million is too many for a Discord. Yeah, I kind of agree now that you guys mentioned. I hadn't thought about it, but I agree. Dr. Doak says, X definitely can feel toxic at times. Glad he's realized this. Yeah, I mean, I was glad to hear him say this just for his own well-being, because he even mentioned in this video how high the cortisol levels are for him, how it's involved a lot of weight gain, basically because he's traveling all the time. He says he's cutting back on the traveling. He said he gets invited to, like, I can't remember what he said, like 500 events per year, and he ends up doing 30 to 50, and he's going to cut it back next year to like 4 to 8 or something. So it sounds like he's doing a lot of things that are probably necessary to make this sustainable, because obviously, like, seeing him running around the globe, attending all these events, doing all these public speaking engagements, and then just jumping on Twitter and engaging with every single fool all the time, that's not sustainable for anybody. Like, nobody could do that, which is why you don't see anybody in crypto doing that. You don't see any other founder in crypto or outside of crypto doing it. You know, nobody can do that on a sustainable basis. So it's like, sounds like he's finally reached the sort of the end of his rope, and he's going to have to cut back on a lot of stuff, which I think is necessary. But it's also going to be a big change in how we sort of interact with IOG. And let's face it, when we interact with IOG, it's largely through Charles. And when we interact with sort of, you know, I mean, he is the face of Cardano. So this is going to be a really big change. Charles is stepping back from that. You're going to see a lot less Charles on X, at least so he says. I think it's going to be hard for him to resist jumping on X at certain times. So I think we'll probably see more of him than we probably should, you know, given the need for him to make his life sustainable. But we're going to see. So Guinness speaks. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I hope everyone does want our midnight tokens. Crypto Twitter or Crypto X is definitely like wading into a pool of acid naked. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hostile place, right? It's like, even I think you could say Crypto Twitter is a pretty hostile place, and even Cardano Twitter, Cardano X is a pretty hostile place for Charles, right? It's like that dude has more drama directed at him than anybody. Like, who's without being some, you know, I mean, we've had some people in crypto social media who've had a lot of hate directed their way because they actually did really bad things. But without having done objectively bad things, I think Charles has had the most hate directed at him of anybody. I don't know anybody who's had more hate directed at him, just like more, you know, just people, you know, directing negativity towards him. I don't think anybody aside from people who did objectively bad things have had more of that directed at them than Charles. So I'm curious to see what this looks like if this actually happens. It's obvious Midnight is going to be super Discord centric. So Charles said that even Shielded and the Midnight Foundation are going to turn off their internal employee Slacks and move all their employees into the Midnight Discord. So literally everybody who has anything to do with Midnight is going to be in this Discord. This is going to be Midnight Central. Like, he's basically moving. Cardano obviously was very eccentric. Midnight is going to be very, very Discord centric. Like, there's going to be a lot happening in there. So this is going to be interesting. This is going to be a pretty big change. This is a pretty big, I think it sounds like we're just changing formats, you know, moving from one place to another. But I think this is actually, this is a much bigger pivot than a lot of people would give it credit for. Morning, Mallow. Thank you for joining. Morning. Lone Eagle says Apple and Steve Jobs. When Apple first started, Steve Jobs was fired in the beginning of the company. I know. Yep. I know. Yep. Totally. Josh Mix says number goes down. Yell at Charles. is pretty much the flow on X. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much number goes down. Charles gets a lot of hate. That's not no single human being that can't be sustainable. Like he can't do that for like, another 10 years. That's not a sustainable way to be the CEO of an organization like IOG. Forerunner 93 says, do you know where Charles was talking about this crazy midnight L2? I'd like to go back and watch it. So I believe what he was saying is that in the upcoming Consensus Hong Kong, he's going to unveil this crazy L2. I think he said at Consensus Hong Kong, like upcoming in the future, he's going to unveil that. Eric Williams says Visor, live stream, or Riot. Okay, okay, I'll think about it. A few people, maybe it was just you, but it's been brought up a couple different times. It's probably you both times, Eric, who brought it up, but I'll think about it for real. I'll think about it. The only problem is it messes up the audio. It messes up the audio, and I don't know how much it adds. I don't know if it really adds that much to the live stream. Sub-Zero says most people got into crypto thinking it was a sure thing. Cardano was taking the long route. Yeah, that's the problem. So that's the problem. I mean, 2025 has disappointed us all. I don't think anybody is looking at 2025 and saying, that met all my expectations, I feel like the promise of 2025 was fulfilled. I don't think anybody's saying that. I think everybody in crypto is disappointed by 2025. And it's time for us to jump out of whatever that weird niche dungeon master race we were in. That little foot race we were in, like, I think we just need to say somebody else won that. Somebody else won that. They can have that one. Just like somebody else was probably the best BBS back in the day. Let's go build the best websites. Let's do that. Let's go build the best websites. Let's forget about the BBS days. So they had to happen. They were the building blocks of what we're going to build next. But let's let somebody else wear the BBS crown. And that sounds like a website you should not visit or something like that. But let's let somebody else wear that crown, and let's move on and build the web. Lone Eagle says Charles does not care about price of ADA, but wants to make a great foundation, and price will follow when it's time. Yep, I think that's probably true. Flying Hambone, let's go, Flying Hambone. Orion's Belt says, I don't use Discord much, but in past experiences, even small groups got messy. Hopefully they can work stuff out before then. Yeah, I agree. Discord can get messy. We'll see how this goes. Guinness Speaks says, Discord is huge. They would have to beef up servers in a big way. Fun stuff. Yep. So, okay, fair enough, Josh Mick. Fair enough. I should have known from your logo. I should have known that would be offensive. Okay, trust me. I will never tell you what websites to visit. So I think this is a big inflection point in crypto. I think Charles was just a little bit ahead of the curve. And it's also true that being too early is indistinguishable from being wrong. And we were probably wrong, right? Back before the 2021 summit, when we were already talking about all this stuff. I would argue we weren't wrong. I would argue we were laying the groundwork so that we would be ahead at this point. But we definitely skipped over the whole meme coin casino thing, being the best NFT casino, being the best DeFi casino. We sort of skipped over that whole phase of crypto, right? We sort of like hung back and didn't build out the BBSs. We didn't try to build the best BBS. We were sort of here focused on the underlying technology and how to build out the next phase. I would argue that's what we were doing. So somebody else can wear the BBS crown. I'll say it again. So here's something kind of interesting. So this is what was referenced. This is something that was touched on, a topic. I'll say not this exactly, but a topic that was touched on earlier. So TX Pipe has built something pretty interesting. So they had this post just today. Last week taught us that being a Cardano SPO is no walk in the park. Managing infrastructure is complex. What happens when we add 10 plus partner chains? plus Midgard, plus Hydra, plus bridges, plus oracles. How do we unify operations without compromising decentralization? Enter Supernode. And I'm discussing this just as an interesting technological innovation, right? I don't, obviously nobody's used this yet, so we don't know what this is going to look like, but this is an interesting this is an interesting new product. I'll just put it like that. This is a very interesting new product. So Supernode, they're saying Supernode, run diverse blockchain workloads without increasing operational complexity, a platform that simplifies the less glamorous stuff. So if you have no idea what they're saying here, just look at this little image. So they're kind of letting you know this is what the dashboard could look like for stake pool operators. Instead of having to like we were just talking about, go to a Discord and read a million messages to figure out what's going on, you could come into their dashboard like this, and they've got a nice little video here where they show the user sort of clicking on Midnight Node and, creating a cryptographic signature from their wallet, and that being like the major, straightforward thing that basically needs to happen in order for them to, get into the workflow to start running a Midnight Node. So if you've never set up a stake pool before, there's some things. There's some things you got to do. It's not as simple as clicking something and just signing a message. But probably if we keep adding partner chains and we have all these other things going on, everybody needs to be a node for all of these various things. A Hydra node, a Midgard node, a Cardano node, a Midnight node. So we've got Midgard and Midnight here. This is a lot of little building blocks. A lot of you're actually being a bunch of different kinds of nodes. This is quite a bit of infrastructure for one person to manage if these are all just different things that are being done manually. So this would make it quite a bit easier. And you can see they're willing to accommodate, running this however you want, bare metal, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure. They're building out sort of like a one-stop shop sort of, dashboard and interface for node operators to run all of these different types of nodes. So this is a pretty big step up. I don't think I've seen any products, anything like this in the Cardano ecosystem. But especially in Cardano, where we've embraced this partner chain model, I think, this is something like this is going to be a huge amount of utility for stake pool operators. And we probably won't even call them stake pool operators anymore. We'll probably just call them node operators, because the stake pool operators are going to be operating all kinds of different nodes. The Cardano stake pool will always be sort of the basis for that, I think, in a lot of cases, but this is a lot of different infrastructure. And this ecosystem is going to be, not too long ago, we could say that this ecosystem was pretty much just Cardano infrastructure, but this ecosystem is going to be running on a whole bunch of different types of rails. This is the layerverse coming to life that Adam always points out the exact videos where I talked about the Cardano layerverse back in the day. But this is pretty much, the interface for being an operator in the Cardano layerverse. This is like sort of the fruition of those kind of ideas, or at least an interface that would allow people to be an operator in the Cardano layerverse. At Cardano says, got a lot of time for the TX Pipe guys. Always support their catalyst. Go back and watch the start of the video. Bulletin board system. BindoCam's letting you know, bulletin board system. Old school bulletin board system. Forums before the internet matured. I showed like Wikipedia had like a screenshot from one back in the day that looked very similar to the. I told the story about using them back in the day. So go watch the first part of the video and you'll get some more information on that. But so interestingly, TX Pipe had something very amusing to say. The initial name for the project was Cardano Box, but I kept getting weird looks in the focus group. And, you can imagine why this is maybe one of the greatest proposed logos in the history of Cardano. Obviously just a joke, but still, like, I almost wish stuff like this was real. I almost wish we had projects doing stuff like this in Cardano, just to kind of take the edge off, just to add a little levity to our very serious dungeon master discussions we're constantly having about, the various, technological aspects of our ecosystem. I wish we had more of this. Only like, projects actually having logos like this. It would probably make everybody, take things a little bit less serious, because we're a very serious ecosystem. We probably need more of this. So good job on this. Very, very hilarious. So I think it's not really an exaggeration to say that, we're really making the move from this race we were kind of half-heartedly a part of. We were kind of half-heartedly a part of the, sort of DeFi race, the DeFi casino race, the meme coin casino race. We weren't even really a part of the ICO race in the Western world, because our entire ICO happened in Asia, mainly in Japan. The meme coin casino race, we were half-heartedly a part of that. It's sort of like we showed up and, we didn't use blocks, we didn't put on spikes, we just sort of like, kind of participated. Now we're transitioning from that. That whole race, just to be the best weird niche dungeon master casino, we're kind of leaving that whole race. And now it's time to do the big thing. Now it's time to do the World Wide Web thing. It's time to build all the websites. It's time for it's time for the eBays to get built. It's time for the Amazons to get built. No more BBSs, right? The BBS days were great. They were fun. They were amusing. I enjoyed visiting, but the next experience is going to be so much bigger. And that's what we have to build out now. We have to build that next experience, the bigger experiences that actual people are going to want to be a part of. People who don't get, blockchain logos tattooed on their arm, like Mike Novogratz, right? That is no longer our audience. It is going to be real people. Omar Wright, thank you for joining. Feel free to listen at whatever speed you want. People have very different preferences in that regard, so listen at whatever speed you like. Okay, if you like that logo, look up the Northern Territory Tourism logo. See you in the NT. No way. Is that real? See the bumper stickers all the time, and they still make me. Are they saying that unironically? Is that like a sincere logo? Like, they must see the humor in that. They must see that this is ridiculous, which I like. But yeah, no, I think now's the time. Like, we're losing. If Charles carries out his word, if he sticks to his word here, we're losing Twitter Charles, right? Twitter Charles, who punches back, who slaps back every time some account with like 3 followers attacks him on Twitter. He's the guy who punches back. A founder of, as we learned this week, as the world learned this week, a founder of 4 blockchains, right, feels the need to respond back just to an insult from some guy who has 2 followers on Twitter. Apparently, we're losing all that, which is going to be a little bit sad, because it was kind of entertaining to watch all that go on. But of course, I think a lot of us, definitely me, will be glad to see that Charles is making his own life more sustainable, because I don't think that's sustainable for anybody. But that pivot's going on. We're losing Twitter Charles in, fighting everybody, fighting the endless battle against the endless zombie army. We're losing that Charles. But at the same time, I think this is kind of what's got to happen, because now we're no longer doing the BBS thing. It's no longer, it's no longer, the dark vampire BBS versus the Gothic Warriors BBS or whatever. We're no longer doing that thing. Now we're building out the World Wide Web for everybody. It's not just for vampires in the basement. This is for everybody, for real people, for daywalkers. We're building out the internet for the daywalkers. It's the same thing. We're building out crypto for the daywalkers. It's no longer, we can no longer be, we can no longer be hiding in the, we got to be Blade. We got to be the vampire who can also go into the daylight. We can no longer be the vampires hanging out in their clubs with the familiars or whatever they were called. We got to be Blade. We got to be daywalkers from now on. So we got to do this thing. We got to do the real world thing. Yeah, Orion's belt hit it on the head here. He says, I love Charles, but damn, he definitely needs a social media manager. Yeah, I mean, this is the best thing that could have ever happened to Charles. It could have only been him doing it to himself. Like, I don't think anybody could have talked him into this. Maybe somebody did, but I think he had to be the one that pulled the trigger on sort of killing, Charles, the Twitter warrior. Like, Charles, the Twitter warrior had to die someday, right? He had to die someday so that we could all become daywalkers and go and build in the sunlight for the rest of humanity. We've got to leave the basements, guys. We've got to leave the basements and go build out the World Wide Web. We can no longer be, vampires in the basement building out BBSs. So I think this is a really good development. I think this is a sign of the times. I think the rest of crypto is going to be a little behind us. They're going to be stuck in the meme, who could build the best meme coin casino thing. I mean, there's a million blockchains out there right now, and they're plotting one thing. How do we overtake Solana in meme coins, right? How do we overtake Solana in being the best meme coin casino? That race is already over. They're building for that race, which is already over. Cardano's been premeditating how to run this next race, this much bigger real race. Cardano's been premeditating this since before the 2021 summit. This is what we've always been about. And I'm glad, if I had to pick, optimizing that last race and becoming, the winner, the best BBS in the world, if I had to pick, winning that one or skipping that one and winning the next one, I will definitely pick winning this next one. So I know it feels like it wasn't optimal. This last 4-year cycle wasn't optimal for us. Maybe it's because maybe the reason we only half-heartedly ran that race was because deep down, all of us knew on the inside that was the race to be the best BBS. And Cardano was built to build the World Wide Web. That's what we got to do next. I hope everybody is having a great week, and I will talk to you soon.